You're listening to the Global Inclusion and Practice podcast, sharing the stories of DEI changemakers around the world. Vivian Aqua and Marjolein Vlug bring you behind-the-scenes stories and kitchen table conversations about the personal perspectives of DEI professionals, representatives, advocates, and allies, talking about what matters in this work and what sustains us in creating lasting change. There are many of us working on creating a more inclusive world. Let's share our stories. We're in this together.
Welcome, Jason Jie, to the Global Inclusion in Practice podcast. And we are super excited to have you as our guest. And can you please introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yeah, sure. And thank you for having me, Vivian and Marilyn. My name is Jason Yee. I use the pronouns he, him, and they, them. I'm the oldest of three kids from Vincent and Stephanie, my parents, who unfortunately we lost my mother in 2015. Parents were born in Suriname, grandparents from China. And in my daily life, I am a DEI, or Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion consultant at Deloitte in the Netherlands. And furthermore, I also do a research. I'm a research with the Tilburg University, specifically focusing on what organizations can do to stimulate more inclusive behaviors, and particularly the subtle, everyday acts of inclusion, because I think that is something we haven't seen too much research yet, and I love to just contribute a little bit more to that particular end. I live in Hilversum together with my partner, Peter. And fun fact is that we are currently investigating or actually dating a woman, trying to see if we can, well, fulfill our wish to become a parent as well in intentional co-parenthood. So yeah, that's in short a little bit about me.
You are sharing so much about yourself. And first of all, I'm glad that I know you and know what a true, kind human being you are. And I hope that the dating goes well, right? Because I can definitely see
It
the difference.
is. It's going really well actually. Yeah, yeah. Hopefully by the time this is live, we may have a breaking news update on that. But
Ooh, let's
yeah,
keep our fingers crossed for that. Let's
yeah.
keep
But
our
it's
fingers
quite a
crossed for
journey.
that.
It's really a journey, but a nice journey, I think, because I think even though even if it were not to succeed, I think for me and my partner to have so intimate conversations about things we never talked about before is already so enriching, I would say, for our relationship already. But of course, I have high hopes and positive hopes as well that it will succeed, and I'm pretty confident that it will. It has to.
That's
We are
exciting.
hoping for you. We are hoping for you. Yes.
Thanks, thanks.
Yeah. New life in a happy family. That's beautiful. And thank you for sharing. I mean, this is it's such a range of sides to your life. And looking forward to when we're gonna dive in and learn more
Yeah,
about
yeah.
you. What is one thing that you would love for our listeners to this podcast to know and to remember about you?
Well, I think one of the things about me is that I'm a proud and creative friend who really is becoming more and more activistic and coming more into myself as an identity. And I try to also bring that perspective. I think we all have a unique perspective and a lived experience. And I try to bring that also into the work that I do with clients as well. And basically also interactions, every interaction. I really hope that my mission is really to make sure that no one has to feel alone in any organization, in society, or a group. So I always make sure, and I want to make sure that no one has to feel alone in their feelings, in the way they are thinking they are not fitting with any group. That really is hopefully something that people will remember for, yeah, remember me for actually, yeah.
Yeah. What's the other side of that? When you want people to feel not alone, what do you want them to feel?
Well, that I'm there, I think, that's also, I think, why I always deliberately share my stories and the things and the struggles and the things that I'm going through. Because if I maybe had that more in the past, I wouldn't feel that sense of aloneness or that you're the only one going through stuff. Because you know what? You're never the only one. There is such a big community of people out there. There's always someone who has similar experience, and I know the power, the empowerment of getting to connect with someone who has a similar experience that really is almost like magical how it can really, yeah, really make the burden dissolve a little bit, or at least lighten it up a little bit.
No, and share it. There's always someone out there who's open to connecting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm doing a PhD research, for example. One thing that I notice is we all have social media these days, like a LinkedIn or Instagram. But what I notice is that we tend to always only share the positives, or at least overshare the positives. Yeah, if you compare it to the negatives. And I recently got my first reject and submit, which is when you publish a submit for a journal, then you probably get a lot of more rejections than you actually get published in journals. But I was kind of wondering, why are we not also sharing that part more and more? So that's why I deliberately also wanted to share, like, hey, I got my first reject. I'm going to celebrate this actually, because I think that is actually also part of your growth.
Yeah.
And it also happens that I got really good constructive feedback. But I find it important as well to share that as part of the journey, rather than only, oh, I achieved, hopefully, of course, I will achieve publish in a journal, but why not also share a little bit more about the struggle, or at least the realistic pathway towards getting there? So
Yeah.
yeah,
And everyone reading that will know they're not alone if
you're not alone.
they've
No,
ever been
and,
rejected.
and the funny thing is, I also got messages back that indeed they also experienced it, and of course they emphasize you will get a lot more rejections than you will get submissions. But it's funny how that goes. That if you open up, that how other people also tend to open up about what their experiences are, what they felt. And I think that is such an important way to start conversation and dialogue. Whereas I'm sometimes worried in society nowadays that we are only almost like shouting at each other, but not listening and having a dialogue, which is such an essential part of us as human beings. We are group and social beings. We have the gift actually of language, and making sure that I can communicate to you what I'm feeling, what I'm going through, which has created that connection for us as groups. But we are sort of losing touch, I think, with that gift, and almost abusing it, I would say, for the other end. It's almost like superhero power. It's not the power, it's about what you do with that power that makes it either good or bad. It's, yeah, not something you are, it's always something you do.
It sounds like the quote from Superman, right? When you have power, you have a responsibility
Great
to
power
use.
comes great responsibility.
Exactly.
I actually
Exactly.
for my dissertation, and this is maybe a spoiler or a teaser for it, but I actually I'm a comic book fan as well. And I love, Kamala Khan, which is a Pakistani, Brooklyn born and raised woman who then figures out this superhero
I
power,
love
and
that series. I love it. I
it's
love
so
it.
great. But there's where the quote actually, I stole that quote, or I of course referenced it because it needs to be scientific, so you need to reference it. But it is also good isn't something you are, but it's something you do. And I love that, because also with inclusion, it's so important because it's always an act. It's all about behavior, the things that you do. So it's not I am inclusive actually doesn't exist, because it's about how you do it. That is actually what counts, because that's, yeah.
I'll make sure to add the link of the series. That it's on Disney at the moment
Yeah,
right now,
Disney Plus.
where but
Yeah, yeah.
it's such an amazing series, and I'm happy for myself, but also I'm happy for those who are resonating with Kamala to identify themselves with her. Hi, I'm Vivian Aqua, the certified DEI consultant, and I would like to invite you to take your organization to the next level of understanding by collaborating with me. I specialize in helping organizations amplify their DEI initiatives and foster an inclusive environment. Reach out today to learn how I can help your organization unleash its hidden potential and create a culture of belonging. What matters the most to you in DEI work?
What matters the most? Gosh, that's such a big question, isn't it? I think what matters the most is that we should always be open, have an open mindset, and keep learning from each other, because I think that is, for me at least, something that I also struggled with in the beginning, maybe because I thought, "Oh, I'm a D&I consultant or a specialist or expert or whatever, so I need to know everything. I need to be an expert. I need to know every bit a bit out there." But the truth is, you will never stop learning. You will never probably achieve that what I had in mind as well, if we stay in the superhero term, the superhero that knows everything and has that superpower. I think actually the superpower then is to be saying, "Hey, I don't know maybe about this topic, but I do know about this." And then acknowledging it, but also staying curious, I would say, and staying in a dialogue and asking questions. I think that is one of the most important things, at least what I think about DE&I. It's also about, really about making sure we understand each other. Are we talking about the same thing? Because now is DE and I think in the past it was maybe only D and then I and D came. But then what I notice sometimes is that even though we use these three letters, sometimes the conversation only tends to revolve around D, like diversity. We have representation and not so much about what actually equity means and what inclusion means. We spoke about this briefly before. Like I said, inclusion is also something that a lot of people have different meanings or different definitions or connotations, associations with. But if we do not really start with the basis, okay, what does it mean to you? What do we mean? And how do we define it together? Then I think we are missing, we are constantly dialed in a different frequency and not getting the right conversations going if we do not agree or have common ground to build on together. So I think that's also
You're,
very, there's a lot of things
you're
important.
my mind is going all over the places, and this is what I'm distilling from what you shared right now, is that it's important to know about your own DEI recipe, right? So what does DEI mean to you, and also share that with other people. But
Yeah.
also the moment that you are sharing it with each other, from there on you can define your team recipe, right? So what does DEI mean for us as a team, so that you as a team or team members can carry the baton on and understand that this is the definition that we're using, and this is what we are amplifying, this is what we stand for, instead of keeping DEI within ourselves or within the team a mystery. So I really like that you are sharing that part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Continuing on that analogy, what is your ingredient that you bring into DEI work? What do you know a lot about? And what's your flavor to it?
Well, I think it's interesting. I love that flavor, of course, because for Surinamese Chinese heritage, cooking, and well, Vivian and I can talk probably a
Yeah.
lot about food. I love the analogy of
There's a
food and
lot of flavor
ingredients.
here.
But I think, what I said before, I think everyone has a unique lived experience as well. For me, it's I think from the LGBTQ plus community, from that lived experience, but also I think being at that intersection of growing up in the Netherlands. I was never Dutch enough, I thought. I was never Surinamese enough or never Chinese enough. So it was a lot about figuring out, okay, where do I belong then actually? And then come to find that probably you actually belong to all of them. You all have bits and pieces of it. And then starting to embrace that more. I think that is at least the unique experience that I got, that I bring to the table, and that I can share about these lived experiences and how I have experienced those things. And like I said, I think that's also another thing that's very important for, if you are engaging, I think, in this topic, is about who am I, and indeed what can I bring to the table. And for me, it's sometimes also just a whole soul searching. I think the whole PhD research as well. I I find myself really continuously on a journey of self-discovery, which is amazing. And that's maybe how we should all should sometimes approach life in that sense, because like I said, we are constantly learning, learning about ourselves, we will probably never stop learning about ourselves because we continuously find new things that we can add to our identity, to ourselves as a person. Started rambling, so I'm actually not sure what the question actually was. But I think that
What's
is
the
what I bring,
flavor?
and then flavor. So it
Yeah,
would be
your
something,
ingredients and your
yeah,
flavor with
and
your.
the ingredient. So it would be something like a Madame Jeanette, pepper probably, something like
So it's Scotch bonnet,
noodle,
Scotch bonnet.
something like that, yeah. I like noodles. So
Okay,
it
we're
would be
getting
a dish.
distracted and thinking about food. We just had breakfast, people. Come on.
Well, you say that, but the first thing I when I wake up is, "Okay, what am I gonna have for dinner, lunch, et cetera?"
Wow. Wow.
I think last night when I went to bed, I said to my partner, I was like, "What are we gonna eat tomorrow?" Yeah. So no, I can't stop thinking about it, my life.
We'll quickly move on to the next question then. Maybe.
So what's it like for you to do the work that you do, right? Because we're asking this question because some people think that it's all glitter and glamour, and we just want to share the behind the scenes of what's it really like for you to do this work.
Well, first of all, I love glitter. But indeed, what it is it like? I think, like I said, for me, it is also, if we talk about purpose in work, I think this is something that I've discovered and come to find that I really am passionate about this topic, and I also like to bring the personal side, like the lived experience that I have, to the work that I do. I think for me, it is also, when I say self discovery, it is also really ups and downs. Sometimes it's also being confronted with people who are not always as convinced of the things that I bring, or try to challenge you, and it's then sometimes difficult, I would say, to not see it as an attack on you as a person, and that has to do with, because I like to bring that piece of myself, which means that I will bring a little bit of vulnerability in there, and because I strongly believe it is an asset and it's also required in order to have that dialogue. But there are definitely times that I feel challenged, and that I actually think, in hindsight, what actually happened here? What kind of reactions were people giving if someone is trying to tell me and emphasize that homophobia doesn't exist anymore in the Netherlands? I remember this session very well, and it was with the client, and I was in the car on my way back from the session. I was just starting to cry. I was, like, in tears, like, what actually happened here? Because I was a little bit overwhelmed maybe as well with the emotions and the triggers. So because I bring something personal as well, it also is sometimes difficult to really stay resilient in that sense, or at least deal with the emotions that you sometimes have as a person, because it's not that I'm just doing a trick there and then that's it. It's really also something that's near and dear to me, which means that I sometimes I'm continuously, I'm still practicing it to make sure that it is not a personal attack, but it is, yeah, try not to take it as personally, which sometimes is difficult because at the same time it is something personal because you bring something to it. So behind the scenes is that there's a lot of Celine Dion songs that for me are a nice way to just let the emotions go, because I also noticed that I sometimes do not share as often. For example, with my partner, I can use that more to really allow other people in the thoughts that I have, because I tend to, yeah, really incorporate everything, and maybe implode at a certain moment in time where I sometimes really need to just vent and need to just share it and just get it out of my system, literally. So it's also about installing those mechanisms, I would say, to cope with it, and that I'm continuously learning about. Like I said, we never stop growing, and for me, that really is something that I sometimes have to deal with myself as well, and also reacting in that moment. I'm a professional, so I will I will be able to facilitate it professionally enough and facilitate the discussions. But in hindsight or afterwards, there comes a moment sometimes that I just reflect on it and just think, "Hey, what the actual F happened actually here? And
Yeah,
how do I
and
ref."
you're saying that you're a professional, but professional have emotions, right? And you are
Yeah.
also dropping a lot of things that I do need to decipher. So in that moment when, for instance, a person is saying that there is no homophobia in the Netherlands or it's gone and we now have pride, like everything is solved, would you label that moment as a microaggression?
I think yes, in that sense, because it's somewhere invalidating my experience, invalidating the things that I see, and notice. It's interesting because I think the term microaggression is in that sense always, I think, in the eye of the beholder. So in that sense, if I experience, and that indeed I think I experience it in that moment, that at first instance I'm like, what do you actually mean? And how does it then manifest according to this person? But I think to me, how I interpret or perceive it in that moment, or at least afterwards when I'm listening to Celine Dion in the car, is that I sort of got it becomes a trigger basically. So it becomes a trigger because it takes me back to the moments in high school where I was still figuring out my sexual identity and sexual orientation, where I felt I couldn't be who I was and still am. It is a trigger because I did experience those. Well, let's call it a little bit the personal traumas that I have as well. It's also so almost like invalidating those experiences that I had. Whereas at the same time, I'm thinking, but who are you actually, and what do you actually know really about this topic, and what makes you say this to me? Yeah, I think that if it labeled microaggression, if we go to the terms, yes, I think if I'm the eye of the beholder, then yes, it was a micro invalidation probably of my lived experience, or maybe even disregarding it, almost like gaslighting. Like you label it or you see it as homophobia, but actually it doesn't exist. You're misreading the current situation.
And what I'm hearing in your story is that, and you sort of skip over it, maybe because it's so obvious to you, is that every time this really impacts you, it really hits you. Yet you also say, "Oh, I'll just ask why. Why are you saying that, or where is that coming from, or what do you mean? What do you mean?" And actually, you're still curious about where is this coming from? What is going on with that person? What makes them say that? So that curiosity, even though you get hit by a remark that really not nice to hear and really hits you personally, you still have that curiosity as an undercurrent. You skip over it, but I'm like, well, where does he pull that from? He's still
Yeah, yeah,
curious, even though there's still a
yeah.
curiosity.
Well, I think it also, if we go deep, I think into it, I think what I've also learned. So there's this concept called covering or masking, and I think I've become quite well in trying to assimilate and trying to adapt. So I've learned as a sort of defense mechanism from the past to just have my first reaction be, okay, let's cover, let's try to deal with the situation in a way that we can mitigate it, or at least deal with it, which in the past meant that I was covering up for maybe the little bit more femininity, flamboyant person that I am, or not mentioning specific things that I did in the weekend, or that I have when I have a partner. So I think that mechanism also can help and be useful in those situations, because my first innate reaction is not going to be all confronting then, but it's more or less going to be like, okay, how can I use this energy in a different way? And yeah, and that's where what I don't label as being professional in that moment is that I can still shift the dialogue in a different way, and have a nice ending towards it without making it too personal. But it doesn't mean, indeed, like you said, that I'm still impacted by it, because think one of the things that from microaggressions theory is also it's death by a thousand cuts because it is so micro, seemingly micro for anyone who doesn't really witness this on a daily basis. But someone who does, one seemingly small cut can actually lead to a big impact because of the cumulative effect that it can have.
Yeah. So what do you do
It's
about that?
invisible trauma, right?
Yeah. I mean, is Celine Dion enough, or do you work to
And which
let it
song of
go?
Celine Dion? Share with us. Which is your
Oh,
go-to?
we can start a playlist maybe then.
Yes, we do that.
Yeah.
Please share.
I mean, what song is not? I think for me, well, All by Myself is definitely. Well, talking about loneliness, I just figured it out. Maybe that it's sitting with your emotion, actually. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but it is enough. But it's also about building that resilience because that resilience also takes you to be really in a specific mindset. So I do notice, for example, if I'm tired, if I'm stressed, if I'm depleted of energy, then those are the moments that I am also not able to counteract, I would say, what I call the inner demons or the inner voices that tell me you are not enough, you're the imposter. And I need to have that energy as well. So for what helps for me as well is just to unload together, really just cuddling with my partner, just having those loving moments to recharge my battery. I like video games. Like I said, I'm also a little bit of a nerd. So I also love to just be fully immersed into a superhero comic or just a game to really just also just take my mind off of it and also allow my mind to process everything. Yeah, those are the things that I like to do, and also exercise because I think just like a muscle, I think this is also a muscle that you need to train. And if my body and the blood is flowing in a good direction, then I think I'm also better capable of, yeah, handling the inner demons.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not just your brain. So, you recharge and you process with your body as well, whether it's cuddles or workouts.
Yeah.
And the ritual, perhaps even of, playing Celine Dion songs. If you always do that, there's a ritual in it, and that
Yeah.
there's
Well, it
comfort.
helps the other way around as well to energize and really empower me. So where on the one hand of the spectrum, it's Celine Dion. On the other end, it's RuPaul probably then to really have like these motivation kind of songs, which yeah, which I love. Yeah.
Hey, are you ready to rediscover focus, clarity, and resilience so that you can be a stronger change maker for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging? I am Marjolein Vlug. I'm a certified coach. And whether you're getting started in DEI or are further along in your journey, I can support you to take your work to the next level. With me as your ally, you can gain clarity on your next initiatives or career goals, make intentional choices, stay accountable to them, deal with the intensity of the work, and create real change. Let's talk. I'd love to learn more about you. Reach out, book a chat.
So looking at this decade, what do you see about this decade that people should know more about?
This decade, like in the 2020s, or so you want me to look forward?
I want you to look whatever way you want to look towards to.
I think I'm inspired as well. Like it's change is happening because the more resistance comes for the change, it means we're doing something good. I heard this and I think that I was attending a pride talk in the Nieuwe Kerk the other day, and David Mixner was one of the speakers who is a really great LGBTQ plus activist in America. And I think it was a Mixner who said, indeed, if there's resistance and there is a lot of loud resistance, it means we're doing something good because that means that change is happening. So we should continue really with what we are doing, but also unite, I think, because the what I mentioned earlier is that sometimes it can be so polarized, I think we should also stand together and really unify in terms of, yeah, human rights. Human rights should never be a negotiable kind of thing, but we should stand together, whether it's feminist or transgender rights or black people. We should all stand together, I think, because if we really combine those forces, there's no denying then anymore. And I think what works too well, I think, is that whatever majority is currently then in charge and power is that they spread a narrative and a discourse that tries to divide us, which then also makes it better for them to handle it. Whereas I think if we really were to unify, then it actually is a force that can be stopped. And that's what I foresee and hope for this decade as well, that really change is there, even though there is loud resistance. It only means that we are doing the good thing, because that means that they're seeing and realizing, yes.
It's the sound of encouragement.
Yeah, yeah. So I am encouraged and empowered, and I think that, yeah, we should continue.
Thank you.
What do you see is the thing that unites us?
I think all being human. I mean, we are all human. We have unique experiences, and we have the gift of language to share it with each other, what is going on in our heads, what we are going through. And we all have commonalities. So another thing that was mentioned in that same talk was also, find, if it's only 5 or 10% that you have in common with a person, find that and use that soil to build together. Because even though you might not see eye to eye with someone, it is still there's still a human being behind it. There's still someone that really is having things in common. We both breathe air. We both have a beating heart. That if that's enough to go with, there are still things you can build on together. But it's identifying that first, and then trying to build on that soil together. But it is also not shutting down doors. It's not, what I notice sometimes is that, oh, we can't work with them because X Y Z, because they are a bad group of people or bad company. But then, isn't it also a missed opportunity? Because if you can always find a common ground somewhere, and then together build something that is better for change, I think. I found that really inspiring, and I thought, yeah, I believe that as well. Also, I would say in our own country, I really hope as well for government that they start to seek more collaboration and more empathy and common ground, because we need it. We need it to this solve the problems and challenges that we are facing. We're not going to be able to solve it all on our own.
And then
I
sprinkle
love
some
the call to
yoga.
action. I was saying I love the call to action that you are calling out towards the government to act upon and the company. So thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, but also for each and one of us as well. It's also about educating ourselves. So it's not, maybe not enough to just go and vote and take the red pencil and vote, but let's also educate ourselves on challenging the leaders or to be leaders. What is your stance on pay equity, gender pay equity? What is your stance for the rights of people with transgender experience? It's also about asking these questions and demanding a stance that decides who you're going to vote for. And I think we can, at least I sometimes can do a better job in that as well, to really ask those questions, be that voice, and use your voice as well to ask these questions.
Yeah. It's something that I've been seeing more and more of in my sessions, and having conversations with people. There's more and more people that have a day job. I mean, DEI is not their core thing, and yet they're learning things, and they're asking questions of their managers, of their representatives, and saying, "Hey, well, what about this?" There's so much that's being sparked, and so
Yeah.
much being asked, questions that are being asked more and more, and it's something that surprised me actually. Like, oh, wait a minute, that's happening too. And I'm curious, what's been a surprise for you that you've encountered in your work?
Surprise that I've encountered in my work. Well, I guess what I've come to find is just being an advocate and being outspoken, I think, about this topic. What surprised me is that you can also really inspire others, I think, by just and sometimes it's just by being present or sharing your story, which I found amazing because at the same time I was like, but I'm just being me and I'm just doing the things that I am loving and passionate about. But then sometimes getting the feedback on how inspiring it is or that people take something away from your story. I think that was for me surprising in that sense. I was like, oh wow, maybe I should do something more with this. And that's for me, I think also what I referred to in the beginning about not being alone. And it is contagious, I guess, as well sometimes. But it's about using the voice. I think for me, that is something that surprised me how powerful it can be to just share personal stories.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing yours here too. This is another way of sharing that more widely and
Yeah,
inspiring more people.
I'm
yeah.
curious to find out, who is Jason Yee becoming?
Who am I becoming? More and more, I think, comfortable in my own skin, I would say. I think we are continuously finding new things out. And for me, like one of the things is also just reading more about, well, for example, my pronouns are he, him, and they, them. And that's only something I recently discovered that really was something that I started to embrace more and more is that I can have masculine energy and feminine energy at the same time. And I'm starting to grow more and more comfortable with both of those elements. And that's because I got more knowledge and I was reading more about it. I was like, wow, this actually feels more like me. Why not really do that? And so I think I'm becoming more myself. I think I'm becoming more and more comfortable with who I am and also more comfortable in what I want to be. So if what I'm becoming is probably more myself.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you. And the world needs more of Jason, so I'm looking forward to see more of yourself as well. And
Well, I don't think they need more Jasons. I think what makes us
what's
unique is
wrong
also
with more
really decide.
Jasons? We need more Jasons.
Oh, we need more people who really are okay with themselves and embracing themselves, and also other
Exactly.
people to just allow people themselves to be. I think that is more.
Well, we just heard about Celine Dion. What other things would you recommend that we and everyone listening listens to, reads, watches?
Any recommendations, you mean? And well, it's basically sitting with yourself and trying to see what kind of elements or lived experiences do I not know and be curious about that. I mean, there's so much to be found on whether it's Netflix, Disney Plus, or whatever streaming services you have. But just be curious and just maybe search for it and then try to find out more about these worlds, lived experiences, the challenges. It's also about, I think, challenging your own mindsets and your what you know and whatever that is can be anything. I think that is the biggest. I mean, there's a whole journey and an adventure you can go on and embarking, just trying to discover more about the world and about yourself while you're doing that. Yeah, so whether that's Celine Dion or whether that is Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, there's always something you can learn from, and it's about expanding, I think, your horizons. I think that is, I would say, the biggest recommendation. And take care of yourself. It is true what they say in the planes. It's your own mask, oxygen mask first, and then you need that in order to help others. I think that's for me as well the biggest recommendation, or at least that I came to find and to discover it as well. If I am as a person taking care of myself, I'm also better able to help others.
What is important for others in DEI to remember?
What is important for others in GI to remember is that you even though you are an expert, even though you are a consultant or coach or whatever, you also are human in that sense, which means you also will continue to learn So what helped me the most as well is getting rid of my own, how do I call it? I would say that you do not put yourself that high standard of you need to know everything. How do you make sure that you help others to open up a bit more and have that open mindset? I think that, and also creating it more personal flavor into it, because that's what makes us human, I think, as well. And that is so important. So don't forget about the human part, is whether that's also taking care of yourself. I think that's also part of being human. You're a human yourself, but also bringing that humanness everywhere and trying to unlock the humanness in others.
I had so much fun talking to you, and I just wanted to connect with the listeners and those who are maybe reading the show notes that they need to connect with you, find out about your newsletter. So we'll definitely include the links that you shared. Looking forward to the Celine Dion playlist that you are creating.
Yeah, yeah. That was really nice. Thank you for having me here as well. It's well, time flew by, I have to say. I could talk like this forever.
Us too.
Good sign. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing.
So, for those of you who are listening, watching, or reading the show notes, connect with Jason. Look at the links that he's sharing or they are sharing. And until next time, bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. You're warmly invited to pause for a moment and think about what stood out to you from this conversation. Please share this episode with others to inspire them too. Make sure to subscribe to our Substack channel. We'll be back soon with more episodes. Be well, take care, and stay connected.